It had been on my bucket list to sell my art someday and start an Etsy shop. I had a very strong gut feeling that I had to do it. When some strangers would purchase those items, it was honestly very surreal. Like, first of all, how the hell did you find this? Second of all, you would pay $20 for this? You would pay like $5 shipping? Like, I don't even do that. So it was a moment that kind of shook my reality. The forces of authentic creative expression and monetizing their expression, they live at different ends of the spectrum. They're enemies.
Today on the podcast, we've got Rena Li. She's the founder and creator of Lotus Haus Studio, a story inspired by the Asian diaspora told through intentional, slow-made, and whimsical designs that serve as a reminder to practice self-compassion and authenticity.
I had one question for you, but I don't know if you had a format
Oh, fire
for
away.
this pod. Okay, cool. I know Matt mentioned that like this is his first year being very creative, and I I love it when I see people embracing their creativity. I think everyone is a creative. It makes me sad when people think that they can't be like an artist or a designer because they think they have to have these certain technical skills. It makes me really happy to see people lean into their creativity, and creativity looks different for everyone. I'm curious for you guys, what do you feel when you feel creative? And like, what does that look like to you guys?
Hmm. Okay. For me, being creative is me acting authentically to my true self of like what I'm interested in, what I'm good at. If I think about when I was not creative, there's all these other things that kind of impede acting like my true self, whether it's like insecurities or lack of awareness of something I am interested in, or simply like undiscovered things. Like if you've never tried a certain food, then you would never know you like it, that sort of thing. Lately, I've been thinking about creativity as like a unique combination of ideas that are not connected, and then you synthesize them and package them in your own unique way. A lot of people say there's no new ideas, and I think that's pretty accurate. Whenever someone says something refreshing, they're not saying anything new. They're just maybe taking multiple ideas and combining them together and then presenting that in a refreshing way. So that's how I think about creativity.
For me, I've never thought of myself as creative growing up. I've come to realize is defined differently. Like, if you gave me a blank piece of paper right now, asked me to draw anything, I'd have nothing for you. But the way that I describe creativity is like not having any instructions on what to do, where to go, and not having like a defined finish. I think I found creativity in other ways, like starting this podcast. Like, what does it look like? What are the conversations, and when are we done? Those are things that have been more creative for me. It's verbal creativity. I'd love to learn how to
Mm.
draw, but I have still a very poor foundation in that. And I believe you in that anyone can do it, but one form of creativity at a time.
Yeah, I really like the idea of different forms of creativity. I've seen that a lot in my 8 months in New York. Verbal creativity is one where there is no, like, literally thoughts can pivot anywhere. And some of the fun in that is what can you glean off of what they just said and then turn it into like a different path of conversation? Or where can you find the overlaps to where you draw your own insights and how can you make everyone feel heard, etc. It does feel like a fun creative mental exercise at the same time. I've also seen people that are extremely expressive in their like interior design as well, which is something that I lack. But seeing them in their creative process, which is a lot slower than the creative process that I'm used to, they may like buy something, let it sit there, play around with it like physically. And I see some people dive into pottery and they love the slowness and intentionality, and that's how they dive into flow state. So yeah, it's really cool to see how everyone's creativity manifests in different ways.
This is going to be great. I'm excited to hear more of the ways that you manifest creativity.
Ah,
This is the
huh?
first time we've started a podcast with the guests asking a question, but it's great. I'm wondering why you frame Lotus House Studio as a story and maybe some of those words that you chose too, like intentional, slow made, whimsical. What are some of those principles that guide you?
Ooh, that's a great question. Over the past 2 years, I have realized how important storytelling is not only in my creative life and where I find fulfillment, but in the world. I work in product design, storytelling is everything. And I see stories as one of the common denominators in everything I do, whether it be illustration or very quick comic book sketches or videos. And I think on a grander scheme, that's essentially why I create. It's to share with people what my perspective is. I actually arrived at that realization through an acid trip like a long time ago. I was doodling on my notebook, and depending on the dosage, sometimes I'll see squiggles. And the incredibly fun part is, so these scribbles, they're ephemeral. They're almost like, when you stare at a bright light and then you look away, the light
Yep.
kind of follows and it's kind of there, but it's not. And over time, then I like have this like page full of scribbles that kind of makes sense and kind of doesn't. But I guess the part that allowed me to lean into like more self-love and self-trust is that regardless of what this is worthy because it came from me. If I hadn't shared it with anyone, then all of this would have lived in my head. And so, yeah, I think that was like the formation of why I want to create and share. Going back to your original question on like storytelling, intentionality, slow making whimsical, these are all adjectives and nouns that I arrived at after a lot of reflection with myself and also with my friend. She actually helped me craft that about me, that mission. I even got a tattoo earlier this year, January.
Wow.
It's like a juice box, and it says the words 耐心. For those that don't know, in Chinese it means patience. And the juice box is supposed to represent playfulness from childhood. Uh, Last year, I had lost a lot of that playfulness, and life had felt very gray. Overall, I think my energy just wasn't there, and that's something I never want to lose again. So that's what I had stamped on my body forever. Being whimsical, playful, goofy is very natural for me to tap into my inner child.
Amazing. I'm sure we'll go back to all the deep talk around creativity and meaning of life and all that stuff. And hold the thought on the inner child. Just to like keep the context and introduction going, could you just talk about the projects that you've done and created?
Yeah, happy to. And this is why I felt some I guess like insecurity preparing for this podcast because my projects are everywhere. And without like giving a thorough explanation, it can be a bit difficult to grasp because of how scattered it is. I had
Sure.
always been a lover of food, and in college, I was vegan for a year and a half. Being vegan, I didn't realize was actually a really fun way to give myself constraints and see what kind of flavor texture combinations I can make. I also fell in love with food photography, so I kind of had fun with that for a bit. And then, but what kind of, but what made me fall off of it was how tedious it was, the import process and the editing process. I felt a bit demotivated that it would take so long just to get like one output out. And so that kind of faded away. Also, I was busy with school. And then I got my iPad, and that's what really reignited a spark for drawing. When I had started working, had no time for anything creative, and then COVID hit, and everyone had all the time in the world. I always had it on my bucket list to create food videos. And so I dabbled with that. And that's when I started to find a love for videography. Did that for a bit. And naturally, during that time, I had also picked up a past love, which is painting. It had always also been on my bucket list to sell my art someday and start an Etsy shop. So I did that for a couple months. And somewhere around that time, I had moved to SF at that point, and slowly started getting to know a bit more creatives, especially being close to SF Chinatown. I think naturally, like I just met a lot more API creatives. That was kind of my chapter of learning more about my Chinese heritage and feeling a lot of pride for that. Around January of 2021, I was just seeing a lot of micro businesses on Instagram and they were selling jewelry. And I just wanted to try something out. I just wanted to make something and put it out there with very little expectations. So the jewelry started as an Instagram story sale. And then once I saw that there was some interest, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll like make more. And then I put them on my Etsy and then moved to Shopify. And then that's like kind of how it went from there. So like end of 2020 and also around the time of Lunar New, that's when all of that inspiration was brewing.
You're clearly someone who likes to experiment and also draws inspiration from so many sources. You've drawn you've drawn lanterns, you have bok choy earrings. There's a lot of Asian influence in Lotus House and a lot of your creative works. So, can you tell us a bit more about why you decided on using that as your influence and if you've always been as proud to share that side of yourself as you are clearly today?
I think it was a natural result of me feeling very comfortable in a lot of Asian and Chinese artifacts. It just feels like home. It feels like I don't have to do any extra effort. I grew up in San Jose, California, but I guess the interesting thing is I don't think my family had a lot of traditions, and maybe that's why I was so drawn to express it because doing so also helped me learn more about my culture.
Hmm.
Yeah, for some context on my family, my mom is from Beijing and she moved here over 30 years ago. And this was, she moved, she experienced the Cultural Revolution. And I guess as a result of that, because of the Cultural Revolution, a lot of tradition was stripped from her childhood as well. And so when she came to America, it, I don't think there was much that she brought over. Additionally, we didn't really have much of a concept of community. And so getting more in touch with my heritage as well as feeling included and really knowing what it's like to be a part of a vibrant community, those were a bit unknown to me and probably why I put so much effort into those two buckets in the past 2 years.
Well, I have a quick question. Who is Rena? I think you've described Rena as someone with six cups, and these are core values that, when full, offer fulfilling life for yourself. And so, for the audience, those six cups are stability, autonomy, creativity, nurturing growth, new thought, and community. I think that's awesome. Those are a lot of the themes that we actually see across people on our podcast. Which cup do you feel like is currently most full, and which cup do you feel like is the most empty for you?
Whoa, y'all really did your research. dug into dug into my portfolio. Um, wow, that's a great question. Okay, for sure,
Mhm.
autonomy is the cup that is the most full. Um, I feel that very much in my like 9 to 5 work, as well as
Mhm.
my creative work and just my life in general. Though I will say, like,
Awesome.
the creative cup and the new thought cups are on the rise. On the rise.
Ah, on the rise. And that's what we're talking about today. It's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. I think, let's see, what is the cup that is least full? This is the cup that has always been lagging behind the others, and it's community. I think inner community wise, it feels very nourishing, kind of like what Alina was talking about, the intimate friends. I think I'm very lucky to have a core set of intimate friends in New York. But outer community, which is what I got a taste of, like for example, during the Lunar New Year fair with Welcome to Chinatown, an outer creative community is something that I've realized takes constant effort and work. Well, everything in life takes constant work. But as a result of not really, I guess, like putting work out there and reaching out to others, my connectivity with this outer community naturally, I guess, falls aside and has been neglected
Mm.
recently. But I am very trusting in the process, and I know that, as long as I'm following my curiosity, everything else will come. So just trying to be patient, and in due time will the cups be filled again.
Well, hopefully Matt and I can be a part of your outer community and would love to take you to some of these events that I think you'd be very uniquely suited to be a part of.
I
So,
would love
more to
to.
that later.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Rita, you just mentioned patience and following your curiosity, and you said at some point, patience and process is greater than outcome. What does that mean to you?
Um, Great research. Yes, patience and process is greater than outcome. I think Alan Watts says this well. We're not meant to wait for the last strung of the orchestra or make our way across the room. We're supposed to like sing, laugh, and dance along the way. And yeah, I've noticed that the best things that have happened to me in my life were when I let go of the outcome. I let go of any idea of the outcome because I think attachment is what brings suffering. That's what my therapist says. And it's true. After experiencing it, after seeing what happens when you truly let go, and you start to fall in love with the process, that's when I think that's when magic happens.
I feel like I have a few of these quotes pulled that you've said before that I'm just very curious to get your thoughts on. But let's take it one at a time. What do you mean by the axe and I are one?
You're too good. Okay, yeah, this is from an Instagram like dump of when I first moved here, and my friends and I went axe throwing, and I honestly didn't know I had that inner redneck in me. Like I could throw it and it stuck, and like sometimes it would hit bullseye. Yeah,
Okay.
probably
So
from another life.
it wasn't as deep as I thought. I thought you were gonna say something about like artists and like the paintbrush and it's all connected and something
Oh.
something. I didn't know where else gonna go. Um, but I have another one
That's
though.
funny.
I have another one. You said just because you're free doesn't mean you're available. What does that mean?
Mm, yes.
Mm.
I think something that many people may experience when they come to New York is that everything demands their attention. There's always events happening, there's always people asking you to hang out, and well, I love that. I love how down people are in New York and how easy it is to make new friends. But just because you have a free evening in your week does not mean that you are available to spend it with people that you might not really feel energized with. And it's funny that I wrote that all the way back then, but I didn't truly start to take that quote to heart until like this month. Um, Essentially, I was just a yes person and, you know, had very busy evenings every single week. I had no time for myself. I made no time. I was not available for myself.
Yeah, literally in that state right now, Rena. Like I looked at my
Oh,
last week and I was like, I kept saying all I really wanted to do is go for a long run and read a book. And I couldn't
oh,
find 10 minutes to go for a long run and read a book. And it's just because one thing would happen, you'd go to a work event wrong, or like a friend's in town, so they're visiting, or like I just moved in an apartment, so I wanted to like create a space that felt comfortable for myself, but it was incomplete. And so I felt like even though I was saying yes and experiencing a lot of things, I wasn't um I wasn't present enough to like enjoy the after effect of doing something great. Being free and being available means like when something great happens, you have a chance to let it really simmer and like digest it. So that's my goal for the next week is to be more intentional about that.
oh, I love that. Yeah, keep us
Yeah.
updated on how that goes.
But I have another quote that I want to get your thoughts on since we're on this segment. One of the quotes that you're living by right now is that inspiration is perishable. So when you have inspiration, you got to just act
Hmm.
on it right then and there. When was the last major moment of inspiration that you just seized?
Oh, um, I guess this was maybe like 2 weeks ago. I was revenge bedtime procrastinating and playing around with the Wes Anderson trend some more. It was like 2 a.m., went into my bathroom, and I'm like, wait, well, yeah, let me see if I could do something with this. And so, yeah, I got out my phone and like the tripod and filmed it there. And then my roommate walked out and I was like really self-conscious because why do I have a camera and tripod in my bathroom? I think a great way that I've found now in doing that 1% for that inspiration is like drawing it out. And that's why I bought like five of these really nice, spacious blank notepads. And every time I get inspiration, I would like literally draw it out, draw what I think the concept would be, still leaving, 80% room for for it to evolve. So yeah, I definitely taking action when the inspiration and enthusiasm is there is so important.
Yeah, it's interesting that you use the physical paper. I don't have a notepad, but I carry literally a stack of printer paper, and I will
Oh,
write on that as like a. It's only in specific cases though when I use it. It's when I'm writing like to-do lists. I think something about writing each item in a list and like the feeling of crossing it out physically with a pen rather than, like deleting it off of the to-do list feels good.
I might take this in a slightly different direction. I want to hear a bit more about the Lotus House part of Rena. You mentioned somewhere that 3 years ago, maybe longer now, when you started your Etsy shop, you just fucking did it. So take me through some of the early days. When did you just make that decision to make a shop for yourself? And then do you remember that feeling from your first customer or two?
yeah. Oh, those are such fun days. So before I started the Etsy shop, I had a very strong gut feeling that I had to do it. And I've only felt this gut feeling a handful of times in my life. Um, I would describe it as when there's something that I'm considering doing, and no matter how hard I envision my future, I simply cannot envision a future where I don't get the thing done. Like it almost
Mm.
feels, yeah, non-negotiable. It has to be done. And so, yeah, that was the feeling that carried me to open up the Etsy shop. And it was a bit scary announcing it to, I don't know, like whatever online community I was connected with, because I don't know, I guess I felt a little sheepish saying, like, hello, I opened up a shop and I think it's worthy for people to buy from. I guess it's always scary when there's something that is like monetary, and whether or not people buy it, it means that they think it's worth it or not. AKA,
Hmm.
are you worth it or not? I, my first customers were my friends, and it just made me feel deeply warm and supported, to not only feel their support and their love, but also their excitement and their genuine happiness. And yeah, and when some strangers would purchase those items, it was honestly very surreal. Like, first of all, how the hell did you find this? And second of all, you would pay $20 for this? You would pay like $5 shipping? Like, I don't even do that. So that it was it was a moment that kind of shook my reality. The forces of authentic creative expression and monetizing their expression, they live at different ends of the spectrum. They're enemies. And I've always struggled with that as well. I wish I could be a person that is able to think creatively, but also put my ego aside with my work. Um, because I guess if you want to monetize it, it's not all about you anymore. You have to think about the demands of the audience and the customer. You have to put the customer's needs in front of your own. And that takes away from the essence of true creative expression, which is you sharing yourself. I feel like it's a battle that I've lost recently. And that's why for a long time, for like months, like really, really scaled back on activity with Lotus House, because what people wanted wasn't really what I wanted to continue to make. Um, I lost that. And one way to, I guess, like come back home to it again was allowing myself to be selfish and realizing the value in being selfish. I think this is like uh, related to the concept of filling your own cup before you pour yourselves and help others. By being selfish, you are helping others. I learned this through an artist. She's based in San Diego, and a lot of her art is about like mortality. She touches on a lot of like concepts around death, and she also went through menopause early, like very early. She's like in her like early 30s, and she started to create a lot of art that embodied that. This was her being selfish. This is her expressing her struggles in life, and a lot of women out there really resonated with that, and they found her art to be something so uplifting, something that they could all connect over. And because she was selfish and she showed the world that part of herself, that in turn helped people feel less alone and help people feel heard. And so, yeah, I think there is a way to fully be selfish and have an impact in the world.
Awesome. I've got one last bit here before I'll let Matt wrap up anything. I want to do a bit of a bit and have you maybe talk us through some of your inspiration, thoughts, creative process around two particular pieces that I'm a huge fan of to just sort of hear it from the artist. First up is the Forbidden Fruit Loops. Tell me about sort of the inspiration behind these earrings.
Oh, this photo shoot was so fun. To shed some light on the way I started making earrings, I knew for a fact I wanted like a stone that looked like jade. The ones that I was able to find were in this shape and in these colors.
Mm.
And basically, my creative process before was I would just order a shit ton of materials in low quantities, lay all of them out in front of me, and just literally like pair them side to side, see what looks good,
Wow.
see what doesn't. And the forbidden cereal idea, I don't know. I think it was a natural. Actually, I think someone commented on it. They were like, "Oh, these are forbidden Fruit Loops." Way back when I
Ah,
first
yep.
like tested them out, and I kind of just rolled with that idea.
That's fun.
I love it because yeah,
It
I
looks
love
awesome.
cereal
The
too.
splash of milk and everything, it's gorgeous. Um,
Oh, thank
that's
you.
really cool. The second one
Yeah.
that I love is this simple and yet pretty abstract photo of the swans with that really well-defined sun. I think this was even featured in a studio, but yeah, where did this come from?
Oh, yes. I challenged myself to fam get more familiar with Procreate, and I think this is a great example of happy little accidents because the details in the wings. I think I was just literally trying different brushes, and I saw that this made a cool texture, so I rolled with it, either painting it with the dark blue or making that brush as an eraser and creating negative space with it. I would say a lot of these were just accidents.
Happy little accidents. That's such a
Happy
cool way to
little
describe it.
accidents. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. As we come to a close, I was thinking about how with how art is shared today, you only really get a glimpse into the end product, but I think it's rare to see online in like a publicly available way all of the unborn ideas that might be like swirling in your mind, concepts that maybe you're tinkering with behind the scenes. So would love to know what are some of those ideas right now for you? What are some of those things that you can give us a preview into?
Ooh. Some of them are the food plating ideas that I had mentioned earlier in this video. I, yeah, would love to make a series of dishes that are like a bit more water inspired. On another realm, I've been playing around with I've been playing with an idea of a tote bag for a couple months now, and then also gathering inspiration for maybe some apparel. But then again, I have
Mm.
no idea when those ideas will be fleshed out. They all live in my notebook. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I'm excited to see what what motivation comes to me next.
Wow.
Yeah, you'll just have to wait until the time is right when inspiration strikes.
It's
Um,
Yes.
perishable, so jump on it.
Yeah. I will. Definitely will.
Sweet. This was a lot of fun. It gave me things to think about, which is always good whenever I can sort of like check in with myself and how I'm thinking about things, especially on this topic of creativity and what it means to be an artist. I feel like it's a new world for me. So I'm constantly like evolving the way I think about it. I think Abe and I are still just very much in the process of figuring out what we're trying to do. And so this was a great conversation to give us things to think about. So just want to say thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, y'all. This was amazingly like divergent. I love the questions that you guys asked. Yeah, these I've never been asked these questions before, so it was a lot of fun for me to kind of dive into the why.
Thank you. I'll catch you in
Awesome.
New
I'm
York,
gonna hit.
I'm sure.
Yeah, let's all hang out in July.
Yes, let's do it.
If you enjoyed that episode, please like and subscribe. We're just getting started to tell the stories of these amazing creators, athletes, and entrepreneurs. Drop a comment below on what was your favorite part of this episode, and stay tuned because we're going to be releasing new episodes every 2 weeks for On the Rise. See you next time.